The book and movie Jaws introduced us to the great white shark more than 40 years ago and scared us out of our wits. Much of the film was shot in the waters off Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The irony is that when it came out in the mid-1970s, there were very few white sharks around Cape Cod. The species was in the midst of a serious decline, and the movie made it worse, with fishermen hunting the few great whites that there were. White sharks were granted federal protection in 1997, and in the years since have made a comeback that has delighted conservationists and frightened swimmers and surfers. On Cape Cod this summer, shark sightings and beach closings were about as common as lobster rolls. As we saw for ourselves, the Atlantic great white shark is back.
Look at this fish.
Look at this fish.
Yeah, look at this fish.
On a Tuesday in mid-September, we are with Dr. Greg Scomo, Chief Shark Scientist for the Massachusetts Department of Marine Fisheries, following an 11-foot white shark swimming just feet off the beach near Truro on Cape Cod.
And if you're standing there, you don't know that shark's
here. You have no
here.
idea.
You don't know that shark's
No
here.
idea. She's like 10 feet offshore.
Yeah, it's very close now.
White sharks are so close to shore because that's where their favorite food is. Gray seals, thousands of which now call Cape Cod home.
This is the restaurant right here. These sharks have found the restaurant and they're waiting for the doors to open, you know? And when those seals begin to leave the beach, you know,
it's dinner time.
It's dinner time.
Scomo and his team from the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy are trying to attach electronic tracking tags to as many sharks as they can, nearly 200 so far. The way they do it is fascinating. Pilot Wayne Davis locates sharks from his spotter plane, then guides boat captain John King onto them.
Yeah, use a little gas, John. He's right on the shoal. It's about as good as it's going to get.
Standing on a pulpit on the bow of a small boat, Greg Scomo wields a long pole that has a dart and a tag at the end.
Wait. Right there, done.
You got him?
Tagged.
That was it.
There he goes.
Oh my God.
Beautiful, beautiful placement, Greg.
Yeah, thank you, John. Nice
You
work.
can see? You can see where it was?
Yeah, you can see it right at the base of the dorsal. See it?
Yeah.
Now we're going to learn about that fish for the next 9-10 years.
They will track the fish because the tag constantly emits a ping that is picked up when the shark swims close to acoustic receivers attached to buoys.
And how many of these do you have up and down the coast?
We have over 100 out all over Massachusetts.
And that's just you. Other
That's
people
just
have
us.
others.
Yeah, so we can actually track the movements of our white sharks when they leave here.
The tags also help Scomo and his research colleague Megan Winton figure out just how many sharks there are, and have established that Cape Cod is now one of the world's white shark hotspots. They regularly haul buoys out of the water and download data from them to a tablet that displays each time a tagged shark swims by.
Lots of white shark detections.
This tells them a lot about individuals. They have confirmed that they are loners and that the same one will often come back to precisely the same hunting ground year after year. A white shark seemed to be hunting Greg Scomo last year when it came up jaws open right under the pulpit.
Whoa! Holy crap!
What? Right up! It opened his mouth right at my feet.
That shook him up for a bit, but he insists it shouldn't shake up the public.
You know, all I can tell them is that the probability of them being bitten is incredibly low, but there's not much more I can say.
Because that fear is primal.
I think that fear is primal. I think it's innate. I think it's in them. It's in us. It's in all of us.
5 days after our day on the water off Cape Cod, we needed a bigger boat for a very different shark tagging expedition 600 miles to the northeast, just off Hay Island in Nova Scotia.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
We boarded a 125-foot research ship called O-Search, which has been tagging Atlantic white sharks from Florida to Canada since 2012. Founder Chris Fisher invited us to join the first day of his 2019 Nova Scotia expedition.
And we come up here, we've been here 24 hours, we've seen 2 or 3 sharks, and no one ever even knew to come look here before.
O-Search launches a team on a small boat to hook white sharks much as fishermen would, using long lines, bait, and floats to keep them near the surface.
Looked in the corner of the mouth, squared away, everything's green out here.
O-Search is a converted Alaskan crab boat equipped with a platform that's lowered into the water off one side. As the small boat tows the shark alongside, O-Search fishing master Brett McBride leaps onto the submerged platform into water that's 49 degrees. With the line in his hand, he guides an 1,100-pound male white shark onto the cradle.
Whoa, whoa, look at that.
The platform is raised out of the water, effectively beaching the shark. It offers no resistance, worn out after being hooked and towed for nearly an hour. McBride gets right in its face to insert a hose between its giant jaws.
Keeping clean seawater flowing over its gills. I'm making sure it's getting good oxygen.
A team member starts a clock. They don't want to keep the shark out of the water for more than 15 minutes. And O-Search chief scientist, Dr. Robert Huter, gives me an opportunity I'm not quite sure I want.
So Bill, just go ahead and take your time. Just feel how beautiful that is.
Oh my God.
How smooth. Then go this way. Rub your hand the other way and you feel it's kind of bumpy.
Yeah. My God.
The O-Search team swarms the shark, drawing blood and tissue samples, picking off parasites to be analyzed, and measuring its girth and length.
371 total.
That's 371 centimeters, or 12 feet 2 inches. The biggest Atlantic great white they've caught was a 16-foot female who weighed 3,500 pounds. As Chris Fisher measures this one, Bob Huter inserts an acoustic tag, like the one Greg Scommel attaches with a dart.
That doesn't harm the shark?
No. It's just, it floats in the body cavity.
Okay, let's roll the shark. Everybody step back.
After the shark is rolled onto its belly,
There we are. We're at 11 minutes.
Chris Fisher drills through the dorsal fin. He insists it's no more painful than piercing an ear. He's attaching the tag that really sets O-Search apart in the world of white shark tracking.
This spot tag allows us to track this animal in real time for up to 5 years.
The spot tag will send a signal to a satellite each time this shark's dorsal fin comes above the surface of the water. O-Search has put nearly 50 of them on Atlantic white sharks and displays their tracks on its website.
And that's how you learn not only where they are, but what they're doing where they are, which is what you need to know to manage, right? Where's the mating? Where's the birthing? Where's the foraging? Where's the gestating?
While some scientists criticize the O-Search techniques as too invasive, they are gathering a lot of data. 17 different research projects will get samples and information from a single shark.
It doesn't take much to make everybody happy.
Still, there are a lot of unknowns. No white shark has ever been kept in captivity, and no one has ever seen them mate or give birth anywhere. But there are also discoveries. The O-Search team has confirmed that the waters off Long Island are an important nursery for baby whites like these called pups.
Did you get him?
Yeah, got him.
And back on Cape Cod, acoustic tags are teaching Greg Scommel about just how far adult sharks travel.
So what's the most interesting thing you have learned about them?
We now know, based on the tagging work we've done the last 10 years, is that when they leave Cape Cod, they go down to Florida and they spend the time in the Gulf of Mexico and they overwinter in these southern climates. But then some of these sharks move out into the open Atlantic Ocean. And when they're out in the middle of the Atlantic, they dive down to depths as great as 3,000 feet every day. And there's not a scientist on Earth that can tell you why they do that.
Scientists have learned how long-lived they are.
White sharks, we now know, live over 70 years.
70 years.
70 years.
They don't start hunting seals until their late teens, but when they do, watch out. In this footage Greg Skomel shot, you see a seal leap out of the water with a shark right on its tail.
Have you ever seen that before?
Here, the shark catches a seal, and the ocean water explodes in blood red in an instant. The shark then swims away with half a seal in its jaws. Seals have been protected by federal law since 1972, and some 25,000 now live near Cape Cod. More seals means more sharks, and that's what worries the swimmers and surfers sharing the water with them. This photo was taken at the Cape barely a week ago.
Great white sharks very rarely attack people. The one that killed a swimmer named Arthur Medici just off this beach last September was the first fatal attack on Cape Cod since 1936. But it triggered a fear of attacks that can hardly be measured.
Scary warning signs on every beach, stop bleed kits at lifeguard stands, a phone app called Sharktivity that reports sightings in real time, with local news doing much the same, and community meetings packed with frightened citizens.
And no sharks or seals are worth a young man's life. They're just not.
You're the scientist, but you also live here, and you know people are afraid.
We can't bury our heads in the sand when it comes to shark attacks. And so that's in my face every day now. And then it always falls back on the question of, well, what do you tell your kids to do? You know?
What do you tell your kids to do?
You know, I tell my kids, don't go out past waist deep.
That's chilling advice for swimmers, for surfers, and for the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce.
I mean, we basically got to undo everything Jaws did. I mean, we got half the people on the eastern seaboard terrified about something that almost never happens.
I saw the teeth on this character here. People who are swimming nearby should not be afraid of that?
No, they're clever. Like, even though we dress up like their food and try to fool them, they very rarely get fooled.
What do you mean dress up like their food?
You ever seen what someone in a wetsuit looks like compared to a seal?
He's got a point. When this white shark's 15 minutes on the O-Surge platform ran out, we were ordered off.
That was amazing.
They gave him a name,
Sydney,
for the nearest Nova Scotia town, and began lowering him back into the water.
And what you guys have done to this does not harm or hurt the shark at all?
No, because we're monitoring the stress of the animal throughout.
After a couple of minutes, he perked up, especially when he noticed the O-Surge photographer in the water around the corner. Finally, with Fishmaster Brett McBride helping steer him by the tail, off went Sydney.
There he goes. Do your thing. Good luck, old boy. Sydney.
Sydney.
Yeah.
We very nearly lost one of the wonders of the world. The humpback whale was efficiently slaughtered until there were only a few thousand left. But in one of the great success stories in conservation, the humpback is making a comeback. It's a good thing, too, because what we've learned about them lately makes the humpback one of the most fascinating animals ever to grace the earth. There are many species of whales, and one by one they're coming off the endangered species list. Whale hunting is rare today, but there is still a place on the high seas where there is a battle to eliminate the last vestiges of whaling. There, we found a man who has risked life and limb to end any threat to whales once and for all.
Hang on.
You're watching the ramming of a Japanese whaling ship by a combative conservation group led by American Paul Watson. He's trying to stop the transfer of a minke whale the Japanese just killed to the factory ship that will cut it up. Commercial whaling is banned by international agreements, but the Japanese and a few others are still launching harpoons. These scenes were shot for the Animal Planet series Whale Wars. And these scenes were shot by the whalers themselves. who say this is evidence that Watson is nothing more than a pirate. The Japanese obtained an international arrest warrant for him, so for the last year, this conservationist, or pirate, has lived on the world's oceans, unable to set foot on land.
We are headed out to international waters where Watson lives on a ship beyond the reach of the law. But before he would meet with us, we had to agree that we wouldn't say where we are or even what ocean this is. Suffice to say, it involves several airplanes and many thousands of miles.
Toward the end of that journey, Watson sent this trimaran to pick us up. This boat once set the speed record for circumnavigating the Earth. He named it for an actress who is a supporter, but to us it looked more Darth Vader than Bridget Bardot. Watson came to the Bardot from a floating hideout that we agreed not to show. He is one of the founders of Greenpeace, and now at the age of 62, he calls his new armada Sea Shepherd.
Paul, thanks for seeing us.
Oh, thank you. The simple fact is this: if the oceans die, we die. Sea Shepherd was set up to uphold those international laws and regulations protecting our oceans.
But why is that your job? Countries enforce laws. Why are you doing this?
Well, I just do not see the political will on the part of these governments to do anything.
But that makes you a vigilante. You're deciding on your own that you're going to enforce these laws. What gives you the right?
Because I want to survive, and I want to make sure that my children survive, and I'm not going to sit back and watch the oceans be destroyed because governments don't have the political or economic will to uphold these laws.
The whaling ban makes an exception for research, and the Japanese proclaim that exception in tall letters on their ships. They set their own quotas, about 900 minkies, 50 fin whales, and 50 humpbacks. These are minkies, and even though the Japanese reserve the right to kill humpbacks, they haven't, according to the International Whaling Commission.
There is no scientific basis for what they're doing. We have seen them take a whale onto the factory vessel. There's no scientists there. There's nobody measuring anything. They simply cut them up, send them down below, and package them. So this is not science. This is bogus.
The International Court of Justice in The Hague will be deciding whether Japan's whaling is really for research or should be stopped. But while the whaling continues, Sea Shepherd fouls the Japanese plan with rope to catch their propellers. The Japanese fire back with water and ear-splitting sirens. Sea Shepherd throws stink bombs. The Japanese return concussion grenades.
You called Sea Shepherd, which you founded, the most aggressive, no-nonsense conservation organization in the world. And you said, quote, "I don't believe in protests. That is far too submissive." What do you mean?
Well, protesting is sort of like, please, please, please don't do that, but they'll do it anyway. They just ignore you. So protest is submissive. We're not a protest organization. We're an interventionist organization. We intervene against illegal activities.
But this is what happened recently when Sea Shepherd tried to intervene. The whaler kept coming and sheared the bow off of Watson's $2 million boat, which eventually sank. No one was seriously hurt. Watson claims he has cut the Japanese catch because of these tactics, the same tactics that the Japanese say are illegal.
And you're in sort of a prison, aren't you?
Well, it's a pretty nice prison. It's, you know, I don't mind being on the ocean. It's a beautiful place, and certainly the citizens out here tend to be more peaceful.
But when people call your tactics violent, how do you respond to that? I mean, you look at this footage, it looks violent, it's hostile.
The Japanese are committing violence against living whales. We are not hurting anybody, so we're not violent.
This battle is fought in the last place where humpback whales are considered endangered by the international agency that decides these things. These South Pacific humpbacks feed here in the Antarctic summer, then journey north 4,000 miles to mate. This is where much of the research is done, around a speck on the map called Rarotonga. This volcanic island, part of the Cook Islands, is just 21 miles around, with 10,000 residents and not a single traffic light. Here, we found the human, who may know humpbacks best.
He's right behind the boat. Hello, beautiful. He's putting on quite a lovely show for us. And you just have to be careful and respect their space.
They take up a lot of space.
Nan Hauser is an American marine biologist who intended to come to Rarotonga for 1 month of research. But that was 16 years ago. Now her home and her lab are on the side of the volcano, and she spends her days eye to eye with her subjects.
As you watch them, as you see these massive animals and look at them in the eye, and they're looking at you, and they've never seen what a human looks like before, and so they're curious about you, and you're curious about them.
Humpbacks are acrobats. Their fins are like wings up to 20 feet long. They cooperate with each other to hunt for the krill and small fish that they eat by the tons. We've learned a lot about them in recent years. And some of what we know is because Nan Hauser risked her life to discover it. She's part of an international mission to harpoon humpbacks with small satellite transmitters. That rubber boat feels tiny next to an animal 50 feet long that weighs 79,000 pounds.
You got it? You sure?
It's in.
It's in. Okay, watch out.
It's very, very dangerous. All they have to do is pick up their tail and give you a good whack, and all your bones are broken and your organs are ruptured. So it's very scary, very, very scary. My heart is pounding.
When they surface to breathe, the transmitter stuck in their blubber sends a signal. Now we know that humpbacks can travel 10,000 miles a year. That's the world record for a mammal. 80% of their lives are spent submerged, and this is where Nan Hauser has made some of her most beautiful discoveries.
Here we see a male standing on his head upside down singing a song. They are motionless, and the song bellows out.
The humpback song can be 20 minutes long, and they repeat the same song again and again. Males in one region will all sing the same song the same way, but next year they'll return with a new composition. So this is air somehow moving around inside their heads that's making this sound.
Correct.
Even though they don't have vocal cords.
Correct. It's almost, I think, like taking a balloon full of air and going.
The sound carries for miles, and Hauser believes it's all to mark their territory.
They take turns singing, perhaps to say, my lungs are bigger, I can hold my breath longer, I can sing a more beautiful song, I'm the dominant male, I'm going to sing here, so you move away and sing somewhere else.
Can you do some of the sounds that you've heard?
I think the most common whale sound is kind of the. But we get everything. We've even had the laughing monkey. Creaky doors.
What are they saying?
We don't know.
So you speak whale, but you don't understand it?
Absolutely.
But she does understand a calf's jaw-clapping anger. Hauser captured it when a mother went off to mate and left this calf behind.
He does a small jaw clap right here.
What does that mean?
Oh, well, now I know it means I'm upset and I'm going to have a little bit of a temper tantrum. You can see him, hear it?
He's saying, pay attention to me.
Exactly.
Humpbacks give birth to one calf a year, so their comeback has been slow but steady. Before the whaling ban, there were maybe 5,000 left in the world, but now it's estimated there are 80,000. The biggest threats to them these days are collisions with ships and the kind of miles-long fishing line that wrapped up this whale.
They get wrapped up, and then they get held underwater, and they need to come up for air. Otherwise, they suffer and they drown.
Hauser hopes that the satellite tags will mark migration routes so that man can steer clear. History may show that we stopped the global slaughter just in the nick of time. Humpbacks are now found in every ocean, their numbers back to about 30% of what they had been before whaling. It's a sign that a fascinating and beautiful part of the planet is on the mend.
Picture a lump of rock about the size of a potato. Now pack it with some of the most valuable metals on Earth, like nickel, cobalt, and other minerals known as rare earth elements. There are trillions of these nodules, that's what they're called, just waiting to be picked up. The problem is, they're on the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. The nodules were discovered more than a century ago. Now, new technology has triggered a fierce competition to go get them. These metals are critical for modern life: cell phones, electric cars, and supercomputers. 19 countries, including China and Russia, have already jumped into the deep. But the one country on the sidelines? The United States. More on that in a moment. But first, we wanted to take a look at this new frontier. Our adventure began at 3 in the morning. Loading up our tugboat, we pulled out of San Diego. The harbor lights sank quickly behind us. 10 hours later, we were cutting through the chop of the Pacific with nothing to see but the tossing ocean. So it wasn't hard to spot the Maersk launcher, a 300-foot mining research vessel that we'd come to join. All we had to do was get on board. While the launcher dangled a rope ladder above us, the tugboat backed in. With swells over 10 feet, timing was everything. At the top of the wave, we took a leap of faith and landed in the new world of deep-sea mining. We were traveling with Gerard Barron, the CEO of Canadian company Deep Green Metals. He was eager to catch up with the launcher's crew. They'd been at sea for 5 weeks on a test run, mapping the sea floor and fishing for nodules. This was the sunken treasure we had come to see. What makes them so valuable? What is in that?
Well, that is an electric vehicle battery in a rock.
It looks like a lump of charcoal.
It does, but it's a beautiful lump of nodule. The amazing thing is it's filled with nickel and cobalt and copper and manganese, and that's everything we need to build a battery.
All right, start coming up.
To get the nodules, the crew hoists a 3-ton rig called a box core over the side. Plunging into the ocean, it begins its 3-mile descent to the sea floor. Hours later, it neared the bottom. It felt like watching a new lunar landing. And there they were, giant fields of nodules covering an alien landscape. Millions of years old, the nodules grow by absorbing metals from the seawater, expanding slowly around a core of shell, bone, or rock. The potential is staggering. Estimates of their worth run from $8 to more than $16 trillion. They are primarily found in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, or CCZ, about 2 million square miles of ocean between Hawaii and Mexico. On this research trip, Deep Green scooped up over 100 helpings of the seafloor, each box reeled back on board, heavy with the catch of the day. Thousands of nodules. In 30 years as a geologist, Warwick Miller told us he'd never seen anything like it.
Great day to be a geologist.
He said it was a great day to be a geologist. What did you mean?
We were standing by the box core. I remember holding my hand up, it was covered in mud. It's nice that I get to touch them, you know, it's better than looking at them behind in a glass case, for example, you know.
They're in all sizes, all different sizes like this?
There's different types. The type you're holding there would be a type 3 nodule, which is larger, and it's got a characteristic sort of cauliflower texture to it.
Miller told us each nodule has the same proportion of metals. After they're weighed and measured, they're stored in a refrigerated container. They will be further analyzed on shore to help Deep Green figure out where to mine first. They hope to start in 3 years.
There are that many of them down there.
Yeah, exactly. If they found a deposit with this much metal concentration on land, it would be a bonanza that nobody would stop talking about for years.
The rules for deep-sea mining are set by an obscure UN agency called the International Seabed Authority. It's already divided the CCZ into dozens of concessions. Deep Green operates 2. The company calculates the nickel and cobalt in their patch of ocean alone is enough to make batteries for 150 million electric cars.
I love the fact that they're the way we're going to get away from fossil fuels. I love the fact that in these are all the metals we need to go and build those batteries. I mean, it's the most amazing coincidence that I've ever encountered. Mother Nature made these nodules.
They're just sitting there.
It's like, okay, you guys, you've messed up planet Earth. Come and get me.
So you call yourself an environmentalist, but you're also a miner. How do you combine the two?
Well, you know, I don't call myself a miner, but we are collecting nodules off the ocean floor.
So if you're not a miner, what do you call what you will be doing?
Well, we call it harvesting.
Harvesting.
Harvesting nodules from the ocean floor.
Unlike on land, there's no drilling or digging. Instead, enormous deep-sea robots will do the heavy lifting. To see one of the most advanced, we traveled to Antwerp, Belgium. In a country better known for beer and chocolate, we met Petania.
It's a caterpillar. It's a caterpillar track. So we said, what is the fastest caterpillar on Earth? And it's called the Petania ruralis.
Chris Van Neye, the managing director of Global Sea Mineral Resources, or GSR, told us Petania cost $12 million. It's what you might expect if you crossed a bulldozer with a giant vacuum cleaner and then stuffed it with electronics.
So the nodules are sucked into a stream and they go into the system. It's got the capacity to store 3 tons of nodules.
3 tons?
3 tons of nodules.
How many nodules are down there?
It is estimated that there is more nickel, more cobalt, and more manganese than on the rest of the planet.
In 2017, GSR was the first to put a robot on the sea floor. Last summer, expectations were high for Petania's second plunge into the Pacific. A specially built frame swung the 35-ton machine over the edge of the ship, a fiber optic umbilical cord unspooling as it sank from sight. But then something went wrong. The crew lost the signal to Petania. The test was called off.
Was that a big setback?
A very big setback.
You have said that the deep sea has no mercy. Is this what you mean?
That's exactly what we mean. It has no mercy. It has to be 1,000% perfect or it won't work.
GSR hopes to take Petania back to the Clarion-Clipperton zone soon. When mining begins, Van Neye told us, the nodules will be pumped to the surface to a waiting ship before they are processed on shore. With supplies of some critical metals running low, the race to develop underwater crawlers like this one, led by a Dutch group, is in high gear. But some scientists fear that deep-sea mining will wreck the sea floor, a world not fully understood. This rare albino octopus, nicknamed Casper, a species only discovered 3 years ago.
When we go out and collect a sample on the seafloor, we collect hundreds of new species.
Things that you've never seen before.
Sure, oh yeah.
Craig Smith is an oceanographer at the University of Hawaii. He told us he was surprised at how much life could survive 3 miles deep. His expeditions to the CCZ have turned up fantastical creatures, like this squid worm, or a fluorescent sea cucumber dubbed a gummy squirrel. There are other deep-sea originals, too. A foot-long shrimp, a ping-pong tree sponge, and a galloping sea urchin. Mining companies say that the CCZ is only about 1% of the ocean, that the ocean is so vast that it could absorb the activity in that small portion of the ocean.
Yeah, that's a little bit like saying the Amazon rainforest is only 8% of the global land area, so we can wipe it out and it doesn't matter.
Won't deep sea mining actually be less invasive, have less of an impact than mining on land?
I would say no. Mining is mining. I think it's similar to strip mining on land, and it'll take a really long time for things to recover.
Smith is working with the United Nations Seabed Authority, which set aside 9 protected areas that will be off limits to miners. And Chris Van Nea has invited independent scientists to monitor GSR's work. If you find that the environmental impact is severe, would this stop the project?
Absolutely. I don't think we're not into this project to come up with a means to produce metals worse than what is being done today. We're in it because we believe it can be done better.
So far, 19 different countries have licenses in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. China has more than anyone else. Russia and Japan have also jumped in. So has France, Germany, Korea. Even Cuba and Tonga have stakes. Who's missing? The United States. It's not for lack of trying. The UN's Law of the Sea covers deep-sea mining, and in 1994, President Bill Clinton signed the treaty. But it was dead on arrival in the Senate, despite repeated attempts to ratify it, including this past July. Is that doing us harm?
Absolutely. We don't have a seat at that table.
Jonathan White is a retired Rear Admiral who now runs a nonprofit to protect oceans. He told us that being outside the treaty means the U.S. has no say in how this new gold rush is being run.
It's a law, and if we're not going to be part of that lawful system, doesn't it make us sort of outlaws of the sea?
With the U.S. on the sidelines, China has poured hundreds of millions into its deep-sea ambitions. Last month, China unveiled its new weapons that included an underwater drone that will patrol the ocean.
If you're in the military, a weapons system, the guidance of our weapons, X-ray machines, microwaves, they all rely on elements that are hard to come by.
So China controls most of these elements from terrestrial sources?
Yes.
And now they're going after the lion's share of the seabed sources?
They certainly are.
Does that concern you?
It absolutely concerns me. It concerns me with relation to our national security going forward. We need to be in this game.
My problem is with sovereignty.
So we called the 22 senators opposed to the treaty, all Republicans, to ask why. None would appear on camera. Those who wrote us said that ceding any control to the United Nations was a deal breaker. But Rear Admiral White worries if the U.S. doesn't ratify the Law of the Sea, it will soon be too late. And if we don't, what does that mean for us?
I think it means that, again, we become more isolated, especially in terms of a growing global economy.
And more dependent on China.
And absolutely more dependent on China.
So what sense does that make?
It makes no sense.
The country that made it to the moon first may now miss the race to this new frontier and the untold riches of the deep.
Plastic is everywhere. It's not unusual to see water bottles or grocery bags wash up on our beaches. But surely if you traveled far enough away from people and cities, you might be able to find a pristine beach untouched by the plague of plastic, right? Well, we decided to find out. This summer, we traveled to Midway Atoll, a small group of islands midway between the US and Asia. It's an American territory best known as the site of one of the most important battles of World War II. Today, the islands are closed to the public and home to a host of exotic animals, including a charismatic seabird called the Laysan albatross. It's not easy to get to Midway. Visiting involves a long permitting process and a chartered plane from Honolulu to the middle of the ocean.
We're almost midway to Midway right now from Oahu.
After 3 hours, tiny slivers of light appear, a postage stamp in the vast Pacific. As soon as we landed, it felt like we'd tumbled down the rabbit hole into a curious wonderland. There are so many birds on the atoll, we could only get here after dark, once they'd settled down for the night. As we made our way inland, the albatross chicks were oblivious to our caravan. But by daybreak, it seemed like we'd found paradise, a tiny atoll surrounded by turquoise waters. Spinner dolphins patrol the coastline. Endangered monk seals and giant sea turtles bask on its white beaches. And of course, the birds. So many birds, over 1 million flapping, snapping, chattering, Laysan albatross, the largest colony anywhere in the world.
And they just don't get out of the way. Some are friendlier than others, just like people.
Amanda Boyd works with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, which oversees Midway. Every day, its beaches are the scene of small acts of courage and clumsy crash and burns. Once they're off, the albatross can spend months at sea venturing thousands of miles, but returning to the same spot and the same partner. A relationship that begins with more preening and chest pumping than a Miami nightclub.
Oh my gosh, to watch them dance and as they're courtshiping. When you find a pair that has actually been together and they're in sync, it's mesmerizing. They know each other's cues and it's like art. It's beautiful, it's inspiring to watch that.
Inspiring and loud. Honking lovers who are mostly ignored by their neighbors. If any place should be unspoiled, it's Midway. The atoll is blissfully isolated, off limits to the public, and protected as part of one of the largest marine reserves in the world.
Jeez.
So it was disturbing to see this.
What are those orange and yellow things?
Harbor booms.
Kevin O'Brien oversees marine debris removal in the region for the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Hundreds of tons of plastic have been retrieved from Midway in the last 2 decades. He showed us this year's pile, a veritable department store of discarded debris.
Here, an intact CRTV screen.
A whole screen?
Yeah.
Oh, look at this. So you've got enough things you can sort it, I guess.
Yeah. Toothbrushes. We find an incredible amount of toothbrushes. Tires. These can be dangerous because the young monk seals often will get curious and stick their snout into these eel cones. Sometimes we'll find jugs full of chemicals with the lids still on, which we have to treat pretty carefully because we're never sure what's in it. You know, the label's gone. And we've found car bumpers, motorcycle helmets, firemen's helmets, golf clubs, bowling balls.
All this trash ends up here because Midway sits at the edge of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, a vast ocean whirlpool that draws in plastic from coastlines around the world. Kevin O'Brien has been coming to Midway for a decade to survey and retrieve the debris. This is some of what he hauled away last month.
These nets are almost always made of some sort of plastic. Once they've been weathered in the environment, they can become very brittle.
Whoa.
And can easily break down into microplastics.
So this looks like it's breaking apart and going away.
Right.
But it's not.
But it's not.
Long before plastics invaded Midway, U.S. forces repelled a Japanese assault in the Second World War. The Japanese had hoped to use the islands as a bridge to the mainland. The American victory there in 1942 was a turning point. Today, there's a monument to the Americans who died in the Battle of Midway. And if you tour the islands, you find relics everywhere. Decaying artillery, derelict hangars, and beneath the water, the rusting skeletons of old warships, and of course, evidence of the new battle underway here.
We've been cleaning it up for years.
And it keeps coming.
And it keeps coming.
On a walk along one of the beaches, we found a shoreline strewn with bottles and buoys, crates and canisters.
Is this a problem that's unique to these islands?
It's really not. There are beaches like this all over the world. What is unique about Midway is that none of this plastic you see on the beaches here originates here. It's a problem that doesn't know borders.
I think a lot of people see this on their beaches, and it kind of looks like sea glass at first.
Yeah, it looks like a mosaic. It's really colorful, actually kind of beautiful.
Yeah, but what is it really?
But a lot of this is really plastics, you know, and we can sift it here and see what we come up with. Little pieces.
Sure, this is a bottle cap you can see. And what's the harm with this? Are fish eating this?
Yeah, and the smaller the piece of plastic, and the smaller the animal that can consume it.
Do we know that they definitely have effects on fish?
We don't know that for certain. These plastics become a magnet, essentially, for toxic chemicals that are found in the environment. PCBs, pesticides, fire retardant chemicals. And so the longer a piece of plastic stays in the environment, the more toxic it becomes.
Studies have found these microplastics in everything from supermarket seafood to drinking water. But scientists don't yet know what all that means for our health.
When an adult comes in, they'll make a couple of noises saying, "Hey, I'm back."
But the effects on birds are easier to see. Kelly Goodale, a U.S. Fish and Wildlife biologist, took us on a ride around Midway to show us the impact all this plastic is having on them.
So the adults have been coming back every few days to a couple of weeks to feed them.
What's happening right now?
It's regurgitating up more food.
Dinner time here might make you lose your appetite.
Whoa! Did you see that squid?
Yeah. That was a whole squid.
Yeah.
That ought to keep you happy for a while. For all the fish and squid they catch, the albatross bring back plastic too, from that great Pacific garbage patch.
So that could also be
Goodale showed us their nesting grounds.
So here we do have a chick that did die, and as you can see, if you want to take a look at it.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, geez, in here, you see there's so many pieces of plastic.
Oh,
You have a
plastic bag. And they eat the plastic bags. Why?
You know, these can look like food sources. It could look like a squid to them.
Yeah. So they think this is food?
They do think it's food. And, you know, flying fish, they can lay eggs on floating debris. Mm-hmm. And so they will absolutely lay eggs on pieces of floating plastic. Mm-hmm. So if the adults are out there foraging, they pick up those eggs as well as pieces of plastic in there.
So it's the serving dish for the egg.
Yes.
And of the birds that you end up looking at and dissecting, what percentage of them have plastics in them?
Every single bird has plastic in it.
Every bird?
Yes.
U.S. Fish and Wildlife scientists estimate the birds carry 5 tons of plastic back to Midway in their stomach every year. Some of it, Kelly Goodale collects and catalogs.
A comb? This one is probably one of the most disturbing ones. This was...
Oh my goodness.
You have bottle caps in here.
This looks like trash from a drugstore.
It pretty much is.
Okay, all of this was inside one bird.
Yes.
Parts of this atoll can look like the site of a disaster. And while Goodale says it's impossible to pinpoint the cause of death in every case, there's no question plastic can be fatal to these birds, either by filling up their stomachs and leaving little room for food, or by tearing up their insides. As these photos from Fish and Wildlife show, that plastic, which scientists say can take hundreds of years to decompose, is often the only thing left after the birds have gone.
Everyone, no matter where you live, has a role in this problem. Even someone in South Dakota, for instance, who has a river near their home and doesn't dispose of their plastic bottle appropriately might be contributing to this problem.
All the way out here?
All waterways lead to the ocean, and once this stuff gets into the ocean, The ocean currents can take it anywhere.
Anywhere and everywhere. It's hard to find a place not plagued by plastic. Just then, we got a reminder of what else is at stake as an endangered monk seal paddled by.
What's this guy doing, you think? Is he coming in to eat?
He's coming in, he's checking it out. These are the locals. And whether or not you care about all these incredible species that live up here in this very remote place, it doesn't necessarily matter because there are so many other things that rely on the ocean. People rely on the ocean for their livelihood, fishermen. People rely on the ocean for recreation, tourism. And right here, we have an indicator of the health of our ocean.
You say this is an indicator. What does it tell you?
It tells us that the scale of the problem is massive and it's global.